and valleys of my old home far away.
Lovely, lovely.
I've sailed all around Loch Carra's shore, so peaceful and serene, and Ballintubber Abbey sure, it dominates the scene. The shady woods round Castleburg, where once I used to play, and the fertile hills and valleys of my old home far away. And often in the good old days, those hills I roamed with glee, from the high hills of Dromore to the glens in Partary. And often as my thoughts go back across the raging sea, sure my heart is in old Ireland and my old home far away.
Happy young children on the playing fields of Mayo, the boys and girls of Ballintubber GAA Club enjoying one of our greatest native games, Gaelic football, in this, the summer of the year 2000. As we enter the 21st century, we ask, what are the hopes and dreams of these young players? How many have travelled these paths before? The illustrious paths of sporting fame and achievement, the path of long service, sacrifice and dedication. Who are those that have gone before and left us our proud traditions and outstanding facilities? How deep are the roots of the Gaelic game in this, the heartland of Mayo Gaelic football? The Ballintubber story mirrors the story of the Gaelic Athletic Association in County Mayo, and indeed the story of the GAA nationally. Football, in one form or another, has been played in Ireland since the Middle Ages. Indeed, ball games and rural sports flourished in Ireland until the great potato famine of the 1840s, when tens of thousands of our people died in Mayo and the west of Ireland generally. The most able-bodied left for the great industrial cities of America and England, leaving behind the malnourished, the ill, and the dispirited. In the aftermath of the famine, a deathly silence fell over the land. By 1884, Ireland was on its knees. It was hardly an ideal time to found the GAA, but when Michael Cusack, P.W. Nally, Michael Davitt and others attended the organisation's inaugural meeting here in Hayes's Hotel Thurles on November the 1st, 1884, the nation responded, and within a short time the Gaelic Athletic Association had swept the country like a prairie fire. So, when did it begin in Ballintubber? Early in the spring of 1885, Catholic landlord Colonel Blake of Tower Hill House introduced the game of Gaelic football to the tenants of the surrounding areas. Soon, teams from Ballyglass, Carnacon, Tower Hill, Rosslea, Cornfield and Belcarra were making historic sports news in James Daly's Connacht Telegraph. These early games were 21-a-side and were of the rough and tumble variety. High, accurate fielding was a notable and respected feature of the early game. The Mayo Examiner reported on January the 16th, 1886, that Ballintubber played Rosslea at Ballintubber. The familiar names Prendergast, Feeney, Toohey, Donnelly, O'Toole, Murphy, Glynn and Hughes are listed on the match report. In the early years, the game spread rapidly to the local towns of Castlebar, Ballina, Ball, Ballinrobe, Ballyhaunis and Kilchimagh. During the latter part of the 19th century, the most powerful team in the region was Tower Hill. During matches, the playing field at Tower Hill was bedecked with green and red banners reflecting the colours of the fuchsia so abundant in the hedgerows. In fact, the club's motto became "The green above the red," a motto embodying local and national sentiment at the time. The Tower Hill colours subsequently became the Mayo County colours and were also adopted by Ballina Stephenites, who in those early years often represented the county. In those years, there was a reawakening of national pride, which led to a revival of interest in all things Irish, including Irish language, culture, athletics and music. Here, too, Ballintubber was to the fore, with its famous Land League band made up of local musicians and led by Pat Flynn. The band played at many sports meetings and football matches, and at Land League gatherings all over the county. Michael Davitt addressed one of those meetings, held here in Turlopatrick, Carnacon, a field now owned by the Hughes family. The fledgling game of Gaelic football still flourished into the new century, and in 1907, one of the best contested matches ever played in Mayo took place between Carnacon and Shrule. The surnames of the players involved are still quite common in the area to this day. 1907 also saw the boys from Partry in action against Cong. Once again, the names are very familiar. What are the earliest memories of football in Ballintubber?
Well, playing in that father's time. Well, I remember, as I was telling you now, Killawalla and Ballintubber playing when I was a young guy. We should be playing in the around, I suppose, about 1910 or there, or 1909, 1910.
And so it was that on the 18th of June 1910, Ballintubber affiliated to Mayo County Board for the first time. The club was now known as Ballintubber Emmets, in memory of the revered Irish patriot Robert Emmet. In the year 1912, teams from Killawalla, Partry, Ballyburke and Ballyglass all participated in the Junior Championship. From 1912 onwards, the dark clouds of war were gathering over Europe. Many young men were conscripted into the British Army, while many others joined the struggle for national independence. There was a lull in GAA activity during the Great War. After the 1916 Rising, many young men from the club area became involved in the national struggle. They took part in the great anti-conscription pilgrimage to Croagh Patrick and were active in the Sinn Féin elections of 1918. Some also participated in the first military action against Crown forces here at Kilfall Partry in 1921, and later in the evacuation of Divisional Commander Tom Maguire from the Tourmakeedy ambush in May of that year. These were not, however, romantic times, but times of great suffering. In the words of the oft-quoted poem, "'Twas the hiding bog, the sudden flight, the fighting chance in the murky night, the rusty gun, the sheltering wall, and the scaffold's shadow over all." Tower Hill Grand Gate and Quinn's Field saw many fine games between teams like Carnacon, Ballintubber and Ballynafad. Veteran Republican Michael Stanton Borriscara could recall.
The area was very densely populated then, and young and old took part in some form of sport. Most villages were able to turn out a football team. We often set out from Carnacon after Mass and walked to Ballynafad, stopping to eat turnips on the way, played the game and walked back home again.
During the Troubles, the British military authorities banned GAA games. One particular Sunday, the GAA had arranged 500 matches to show that the ban could not prevent the national game from being played. The Carnacon team, backboned by the likes of Dick Quinn, Tom and Jeff Hurst, Pa Varley, Martin Varley and John Goley, continued to play their games at Tower Hill. Ballintubber also played, in spite of the ban, playing their matches in Paddy Toohey's field in Course Park, insisting that they would play the game in a field of potatoes if they had to. Then came the great divisions of the Civil War, as brother was pitted against brother. Though many activists emigrated, those who remained found the GAA a great unifying force in the community and in every parish around Ireland. After the tragedy of the Civil War, there was a resurgence in GAA activity, and the first team photograph from that era shows a proud and fit-looking Partry team after winning the Ballinrobe Street League in 1926. Ballintubber players Mike McHugh, Dick Feeney and John Kelly aided this Partry team. 93-year-old Hugh Newell remembers those early years.
20s.
Well, I didn't. I was in 23 and 24 and 25.
And where did you play?
Back up to it here, there was a big field in it.
Yeah.
Go back there by Gilligan.
Hugh was also handy in the boxing ring.
By there, I was never bit, and I played with people a lot heavier than me, but with boxing.
Ballyglass, too, re-established its team in the late 1920s. So how difficult was it to get a team started and kitted out at that time? Pac Goalie Welch was one of those deeply involved with Ballyglass.
It started now by having a meeting down in Welch's, Welch's, and 3 or 4 was named out to go to the Fair Ball and get the books for to collect money.
A raffle.
6 penny tickets.
All right, so you sold tickets at the fair in Ball, the 19th of March.
Yeah, we did.
Tell me the story.
We had about £9 or £10 sold.
Right.
But we finished it in Castlebar at another fair.
Right.
I think it was the third Saturday. But we bought the whole lot for about £18 or £19.
Ballintubber re-established its own team in the early 30s. They played most of their football in South Mayo against such teams as Ballinrobe, Shrule and Clonacashel. During this period, the Ballintubber delegates to the county board were Sean Corkle, Richard Feeney and Sean Kelly. All of Ballintubber's home games were played in a field owned by the Tuohy family, which was locally known as Log. Hugh Newell is seen here, pointing out the venue of many football battles over 70 years ago. Hugh remembers playing with local men such as John Tuohy, Dick Feeney, Mike McHugh and Pat McGreevy, Joe Hennelly and Joe Horn from Partry, and from Killawalla, Michael Joyce and especially Willie Cawley, whom he described as being as good as half a score of players. The economic war of the 1930s brought harsh times to the countryside, but Gaelic football still flourished. One of the rising young stars of Ballintubber football in the early 30s was John Tuohy. Reputed to be one of the best forwards in the country at the time, John had the unique distinction in 1932 of captaining the first St. Charles team ever to win a Connacht senior title. And in the following year, 1933, he was a member of the Mayo junior team that brought the first national title to the county. When we mention Willie Cawley, we think immediately of Ballyburg. Willie's college experience, combined with the local enthusiasm of the likes of Brod Kirby, Pack Gibbons, and William and Mike Joyce, were instrumental in the setting up of a strong Ballyburg team in the mid-30s. Indeed, many of those same players, along with John Kelly, Dick Feeney, and Pack and Yank McGreevy, had won a West Mayo junior title with Ahagaur in 1934. This is the medal presented to the members of that winning team. But the men didn't have it all to themselves. Ballintubber had not one, but two camogie teams during this period. So, who were those prominent camogie stars?
Well, the players then we had Barbara McNally, and we had Maura Toole, and Mary McCarthy, and Annie Mary Kelly, and Annie Mary Hayes. See, so the organisers were really Miss Murray. She was teaching at the time in Derry, and she was a great organiser actually, and she was helped out by Miss Droney. She was another teacher. Our games were played in in John Joe Gibbons's field, which is opposite Kate Kelly's pub. And when we were going travelling, to the different places, different matches, we went in an old van at the time, so it was great crack.
Of course, the GAA needed talented administrators as well, and William Joyce of Hazel Rock acted as secretary to the West Mayo Board from 1937 to 1941. With Willie Cawley's departure to England in 1936, there was a lull in Ballyburg football. But in 1939, they came back stronger than ever. Anthony Lally recalls some of the stars of that Ballyburg team.
I'll start at the Carnacon, Ballyglass, or Moore Hall, where Jimmy Riley, he was the number one, he was the goalie in that team. There was a Father Joe Morden from Ballintubber, was the full back. Ruddy Kirby was left full back, and I think there was another brother of Birdie's who used to play right full back. And Paddy O'Malley from Ballintubber was centre half-back. He was one of the star players of the time. He had won a minor medal with Mayo in 1935. And then there was from our village here, beside Paddy O'Malley, there was Luke Kelly and Ned Kelly. Up the road then there was John Toohey, Tommy Feeney, Pecky McGreevy, and I think Sean Kelly as well. And then there was Pecky Gibbons from Killawalla, and Johnny Welch, he lived back behind Ballyburke as well.
Another one of the stars of that Ballyburke team was Ballintubber's Tom Prendergast. Tom became the first of the Prendergast brothers to make it onto the Mayo senior team. In 1942, this Ballyburke team reached the final of the West Mayo Junior Championship, where they were defeated by Achill. 3 former St. Jarlath's players reminisce on their years with Ballyburke.
My first connection with Ballintubber was in the year 1939 when I was in the interset class. Paddy O'Malley, who was a very good footballer himself, invited me to join the team, and he brought me up to Buíochas Lane. There was a challenge match put on there between Ballintubber and Partry, and that was the first match that I played. And I wouldn't go boasting, but I mean, I got a lot of the ball that day, you know. They were always saying, well, that's a great footballer, you know. But I didn't continue over it along that line, but I started well anyways.
Father Joe, too, played for the Mayo Miners the following year. He recalls his championship with the Miners for all the wrong reasons.
But anyways, on our way up to Tuam that day, the car that I was in, that had the Hackney, it broke down somewhere around Kilmaine. And there were 4 of the players in the car. And we had to wait for the thing to be fixed. And I think it took about an hour to fix it and repair it. Now we put up a few cars and asked them would they bring the players up, but every car that came was filled. So in other words, no one took us and we're left on the road there. But eventually the car was fixed and we started off, went up to Tuam and went in, and it was just half time. First half was played over. And Galway had put up in a Hughes score, do you see? So for the second half, the 4 that were in that went out international play. But of course, we had the hope in the world to bring down the racing up to equal the Galway score. So in other words, the championship passed over to Mayo without the championship straight away.
Maurice Galvin, a Belcarra native and whose father taught in Clogher National School, has his own memory of that 1942 final.
So then during 1942, about that time, I was introduced to Ballyburke by Father Joe here and Jimmy Riley and Jimmy Welch. Jimmy Welch was in college in Galway at the time, and I think probably mostly through him I came into play with Ballyburke. But I can remember we played in Westport, in Munster's Field. I can always remember that, and as I said, I can always remember the great tea they gave us afterwards. That was one of the highlights. To get something, because after you cycled to a match, you know, and played a match, you were pretty well clapped out.
Morris played for the Mayo minor team in 1940, and according to one sports journalist, was the best minor in the country that year. Transport, of course, must have been difficult.
I'd start off cycling from Moore Hall and cycle to Westport, play the match, cycle back again. Get my tea and go off to a dance in French Hill. That was a regular thing. And cycle into work the next morning, then 12 miles and home again that evening.
So Ballyburke must have been a hive of activity in the early 40s.
Oh yeah, the field was used for area acts, sports, athletic sports, and horse jumping, horse racing, and even the river here. We had swimming races and a greasy pole on the river and duck hunting.
Matt's brother Seamus, now residing in the United States, also has some fond memories.
Yeah, around the 50 I left here, and I think it was going downhill at that particular time. Really. People had all emigrating to England. They were just leaving the dance hall and heading off on the train at Westport and away to England. Right?
Activities were not confined to the men folk.
I remember the areas were Irish dancing, which was popular in the area too. There was Miss Finnerty, Bridget Finnerty in Ballintubber. She was a dancing teacher, and she used to come around to the local schools and teach the reel and the jig. She'd line us up each side, and the boys and the girls and everyone would learn their 1, 2, 3 and their jig step and all that.
Malice used to have this dance hall. Matt's father now. It was his father, yes, Matt's father. He used 8 pence, it was took in 8 pennies. And the girls hadn't enough money. They'd have to bring the eggs to the shop and sell the couple of eggs and get this pence. They'd only get, we'd say they'd only get 4 halfpence and 4 pennies. And they'd put the 4 halfpence in the bottom and they'd put the 4 pennies on top. And before they'd do that, they'd look in the window to see was the crowd good or was there somebody that they liked.
And when they saw the crowd, they'd invest their money
yes,
if the right man was there. Is that right?
That's just it.
Things haven't changed very much. Michael, you remember the opening of this dance hall here in Ballybor?
I remember opening.
Tell us about it.
And to the Blue Shots, they started it off. They'd done up the old building and they started it off. And a neighbour of mine, he was in the Blue Shirts, and he brought me down to help him to whitewash the hall. So I helped to whitewash it, and then the night of the opening, I wouldn't let him, I was underage, and he had to be 18 years. And Matt's father, he said, that's the man that whitewashed the hall. He said, he has to come in, to let me in.
But tell me, when you describe a hall, it was a barn originally,
it was a barn, it was only a barn, and they'd done it up.
And then you used the ground floor or the top floor?
The top floor, the top floor.
And what kind of music would be on?
Well, a couple of accordions and a fiddle.
Doesn't it be house dances?
Yeah, more like a house dance now. More like a...
In 1944, Ballintubber acquired the use of a new playing field called Method Thomas Field, and thus GAA activity now switched to the centre of the parish. And on June the 1st of that year, the first meeting of the new club was held here in McHugh's post office, with Jimmy McNally as chairman, Anthony Lally secretary, and the treasurer was Mike McHugh. Ballyglass too were active on the Gaelic football scene, with Dr. John Langan, a great player in his heyday, now organising Gaelic football matches here in the Round O in Mount Pleasant. Though the villages of the parish often played each other, there was great friendship among the players, and those same players often lined out for different teams when needed. Soon, however, Jimmy McNally would pull all the threads together to weave the fabric of the modern Ballintubber GAA club, which re-affiliated to the Mayo County Board in 1949. Who were those players that formed an integral part of this new Ballintubber team?
They came back from Ballyglass and from Partry and Ballyhane. Some of the outstanding players of that time now were, there was a man from Ballyhane called Michael Cannon. There was a guard from Partry called John Byrne. He was a very good player as well, an expert free taker. And Paddy Prendergast played with us, the great Paddy Prendergast. Played with Ballintubber for a while at the time.
Well, Jimmy McNally was the main organiser at that time. He was a great organiser. He was a good footballer too. He was a good full back. He used to play full back now in the early stages, like in 51 and 52, 50. Then Tom Hughes, he was a blacksmith with Kilcoynes. He came in, and I think he took over at full back, and Jimmy must be on the wing somewhere in the corner.
Mayo's All-Ireland senior successes in 1950 and 51 meant that interest in club football in Mayo was at an all-time high. In Ballintubber, one of their own favourite sons, the legendary Paddy Prendergast, was playing at full back on those winning sides.
I think the best footballer that ever stood in this field was Paddy Prendergast. And I'm sure of it.
His name keeps cropping up all the time.
Because Paddy played here with Paddy was only about 60 now, and when the old team was in it, 15 or 16, and we were only as old as Paddy. There wasn't so many years between us. And Paddy would go and get a ball, he'd go in over the big lad, come down. He didn't care how he came down, but he had the ball with him, in over the top.
This, of course, was Method Tomsfield, which was a hive of GAA activity in the 1950s, and which played host to some of the best players in the province. The great Henry Kenny and Dan O'Neill were among those who shone here.
Henry was playing with, I think it was a baking factory in Castlebear. It was a local league, local town league. But they were beating us fairly well, you know. But Henry was going up and down the field, roaring, "Come on, lads! Come on, lads!" You know, you think like that it was so important to win it, you know.
We were better. So, what training methods were used in the 1950s?
Very little training we had. We could keep going, better they were getting, and very little training, because they were used to being doing the hard work all the time. You know? Every day, yes, that's right, yeah.
When you're talking about good players, I remember one incident here, and I was marking Dan O'Neill. I suppose you heard of Dan O'Neill, he played for Mayo and for Louth. But Dan was another good footballer, but he's a young fella, he's younger than me now, even though he's gone grey now. You think he's an old fella, but he was a fine footballer. But Dan, I know he came one match here now, after the match he said, "How are you training, Liam?" And I said, "Well, I'm not training at all." Oh, he said, "You're awful fit," he said. So he says, "You had to be training." I said, "How are you doing?" I said, "I was ploughing up and down a big hill." And that's what I was at the week before that. So he said, "It must be great training." He didn't know what ploughing was.
And as for training, oh God, they were fit. You know, the hard work, saving hay, cutting turf, out the fields after cattle or sheep. You'd never go out a gate, only leapt the wall like a greyhound, or the wall or the ditch. And even a tishel, if you've seen a tishel, you'd hit a belting with your left foot, the next one you'd hit with your right. You had the 2 feet the same.
The arrival of rural electrification to the parish in the early 1950s brought with it talented footballers such as Paddy Moran, Eamon Kelly and Kieran Brennan. Those players, combined with locals such as Aidan and Con Horn, Mort Prendergast, Liam O'Toole, Matty Philbin, Seamus Langan and John Byrne, gave Ballintubber a formidable side going into that junior championship of 1954. Victories over Castlebar, Islandnady, Mulranny and Belmullet brought them to a county final clash with Swinford.
But I suppose the most memorable day was the day we played in the county final against Swinford. And I can't remember, I think that it was fixed for Hollymount first, but it was removed to some other fixture anyway. And we won it well, and we won it against what was supposed to be a very talented Swinford team. and our great celebrations afterwards.
But the ecstasy of winning a first county title was soon followed by agony. The celebrations were indeed short-lived.
We lost it due to an objection by Swinford to, I think, Michal Cannon, because he's supposed to have lived 10 yards outside our boundary, outside the Ballintubber boundary. And as I said before, you know, the taking of the match from us had nothing to do with sportsmanship, with sport or sportsmanship. But we will always regard ourselves as winners. And as I said, that was the day. That was a great day. And it was a great day, especially for the fellows who played with me, you know.
45 years on, and the memories of that day are still as fresh as ever.
And I remember that we were just all over these guys. We're a mile too good for them. And it was so disgusting then to find out later on that they would come along and have the audacity to come along and object to we won this game in the field. Like, they got their medals at the table. Subsequently, one of the fellows who were playing.
It wasn't easy to pick up the pieces. It took them 6 years to recover, but recover they did, capturing the West Mayo title in 1960 and thus winning the Cusack Cup for the first time in their history. Jimmy Murphy has fond memories of that West final.
Well, I was fortunate enough in 1960 to be one of the squad to be selected on the team, the Ballintubber team, when we went into the county final. We won the West Mayo final against Tackle in 1960 in Westport. And I think that was the first one. I was fortunate enough to be on that team, a very good team. And looking back at it now, we look at some of the people that have left us, to the return reward, the likes of Ray Prendist in Ballintubber and Ray Hill in Ballyglass, Joe Mulrooney, and man, that was great encouragement to myself, Pack Choice, who played in goal.
The disappointment of losing the county final to Claremorris that year was too much for some.
I'm just looking through a few photographs, and there's a photograph there that was the team that was a team of the subs that were taken just before the match against Claremorris. And the interesting about it that there was about 6 guys from Ballintubber on it. There was Morton Ray, Tommy Lally, Liam Horton, Sean Burke, and there was somebody else as well from Ballintubber. Then you had 6 more from the Carnacon Ballyglass area, and there was 3 lads from Trumakeedy that played. There was Mickey Heenan McDermody and Martin Lyon. That was October 1960, and when we went out to play a game in January, that there was 11 of those 15 had immigrated.
But there was consolation for a number of the Ballintubber players.
Because that just reminds me again, going back to that team of the 1960 team, that 6 of those lads from the Ballintubber team played with West Mayo that year and won the county final.
During the early and mid-1960s, the Ballintubber team was managed by Joe Mulrooney, a national school teacher living in Partry. Joe introduced modern training methods.
It was a great team. It was amazing the sort of things that the lads put up with at that time, or if you call it put up with. Of course, there was no pub scene. And the whole players, there were only 2 fellas taking a drink. And we used to meet at least 3 times a week. And I think we started something that's a lot of talk about in these days now, but I think that we must have been the first crowd that just on a Friday night, we used to have a blackboard session and look at who we were meeting on the following Sunday and start to make out a plan to beat them. And well, it worked until the county final. Unfortunately, it didn't work in the county final. But that was 1960. It was a great year, and it was,
Vincent Kane, too, was making his debut about this time.
I remember coming over from the bog one evening after cutting turf or spreading turf or something, and Ray Prendergast, a lot of missing. I went into Hughes, and Ray, they were playing a minor match that evening, and they were stuck for players, and they asked me to play for the minor team. So that was my first time playing for Ballintubber, and I think I played senior the same year, and went, or junior, whatever it was. So I went on from that, and I played Mayo minor and junior, and I played even a bit senior. Not a lot, but a small bit. And
however, it wasn't until 1964 that Ballintubber began to believe in themselves. This was the year of the infamous three-team mix-up in Westport, from which Ballintubber progressed, only to succumb to old rivals Buíochas in the final. In 1965, aided by the Langan brothers from Ballintubber moved up to intermediate status, playing their home games at the Thurlach, Ballyglass, while the junior team played here in McHale's Field, described by one journalist at the time as the spongy sod of Errow Bog. Shortly afterwards, the club acquired the use of a new playing field in the heart of the parish, where Ballintubber National School and Community Centre now stand. There was one small problem, however.
But at that time we came up against a big difficulty. There was a main ESB line passing right here. We're actually standing now where the pole was situated.
In the centre of the pitch?
In the centre of the pitch.
Yeah.
The goal was over there on that side, one goal, and the other was the far side. So the main thing was the danger of playing matches with a pole and the ESB wires crossing over. I remember a few times kicking a ball or lads playing football, and it would actually hit the wire and drop straight down. So therefore, lads playing in the middle of the field would be at 6s and 7s.
The national press too covered the story.
The Connaught Telegraph took up the item and they published some photographs, which was subsequently taken up by the News of the World. Now, I was secretary at the time, and I remember getting a letter from the ESB making myself liable if any accidents. It wasn't the year of health and safety, but it was the year of liability, and the club liable if any accidents happened. But they had reduced the cost of removing the line to a very nominal fee of £10. But we did get great coverage from the News of the World at the time.
Solving the pole problem, however, didn't cure the ills on the football field. In fact, the years 1965 to 1970 could only be described as the most agonising years in the history of the club. Years of utter frustration, bordering on despair.
Well, I started playing with Ballintubber in just about 1965, and it was a very lean period in that particular time, you know. I remember us playing in 4 county finals and losing both, or losing the 4 and playing in 2 semi-finals and losing those. But I suppose I would have to think that, or say that the 68 final against Kilmaine was the most bitter one to swallow, losing just by a point.
And after the game, I always remember Vincent Kane, the captain. He was sick during the week and he was taking tablets. A lot of people said he shouldn't have been playing. So I remember I was wearing his jersey. It was a maroon jersey he used to wear in training. And a lot had left the dressing room. And I remember taking off the jersey and going over as far as him to give it back to him. And Vincent was still in the corner, crying away to himself. And it's one of those memories of defeat that, you know, it sticks in your mind for many, many a day.
The passion in the red jersey was intense. Indeed, maybe over-intense at times.
Marcus, what are your memories of playing with Ballintubber?
Well, I would say that my main memories are of being lucky enough to be part of a great team. A lot of us came up together with Christy Feeney, Jimmy Lally, Mickey, all the boys. But there was one particular guy that showed, through the passion and the commitment he showed, I don't believe that he got his justification by being rewarded with the county colours. I was lucky enough to play midfield beside him, and we had quite a successful partnership. But when things weren't going well, sometimes I'd be ready to throw in the towel, look over across, and there he was crying with temper, and that was Michael Prendergast.
For Father Mickey Lally, however, there was some consolation. Having played for the Mayo under-21 team in 65 and 66, he finally won that elusive All-Ireland under-21 medal in 1967. But it wasn't all joy.
Now, sadly for me, there were three of us on that team who were clerical students. There was a J.J. Cribb and a P.J. Gold and myself. So we weren't allowed out for the replay. And I remember the county board did their best to get us out. They phoned the president of Maynooth, who was Mitchell, a Mayo man at the time, and also they tried the Archbishop. He was Walsh and Tune, but no way. We weren't let out at all. And there was 3 subs brought in. 3 subs played very well, and Mayo beat carrying that replay. I think it was in Ballinasloe. And I remember sitting in a hall in Maynooth. It was a Callan Hall, and I got a phone call, and it said Mayo had won. And very soon after, a telegram came for the 3 of us from the Mayo County Board to say, well done, we have won it. But there was a lovely touch afterwards, around the Christmas time, when there was a dinner in Castlebar here and the medals were presented, that the County Board brought up the 3 of us first of all, J.J. Cribb and P.J. Gold and myself, and presented us with the medals first. But I made up my mind that time that never again would anything ever happen like that if there was a match on, I was going to come out.
The early 1970s proved to be a lean period for Ballintubber footballers, their only success coming in 1970, when a Ballintubber Tourmakeedy Ball selection captured the West Mayo minor title here in Westport. The ladies, however, stepped into the breach with the reformation of the Ballintubber Camogie Club. Shortage of funds posed no problem for those enthusiastic girls.
Francis, how did Camogie start in Ballintubber?
In 1968, approximately, I think it would have been Cassie Heenan, now Hinnelly, and Francis Feeney were attending the vocational school in Castlebar, and they came up with the idea, and then they would have mentioned it to others that lived around Ballintubber. And we had played a bit in the national school, and Cassie would have played at secondary school, I played in secondary school. So the pitch was there, and it was a natural progression.
Cassie, in the early days, there was very little support for Camogie. Transport was always a problem. Tell me how you solved it.
Well, we were just going to school at the time, so we had difficulty, and I had just begun to start to drive. So one day I coaxed my father's Morris Minor from him, telling him I was going to Clogher. But in actual fact, I was going to Islanady first, and brought a carload there and played a game. At that time, we had 2 Camogie teams in Ballintubber for maybe 2 years. We went to Islanady, played our game. The 5 or 6 I had with me, back into the car again. There were 5, I think, allowed to play the 2 games. So the 5 I had with me, we left Islanady, straight to Clogher, and togged out again and played our second game there.
Lack of competition, however, signalled the demise of this new Camogie club. The Camogie gym slips were discarded, and were soon replaced by togs and jerseys as a newfound interest in ladies' football swept the county. The Ballintubber Ladies Football Club supplied many players to All-Ireland winning Mayo teams during this time.
Catherine, you have the distinction of collecting All-Ireland medals. Tell me about it.
Yeah, I won my first All-Ireland medal in 1975, but the final was played on Easter Sunday, 1976 in Athlone. We played Offaly, and Offaly had a very strong team at the time, but we absolutely hammered them. And then for 1976 championship I was made captain, and we played it in October in Birr in Offaly. We won that very well against the Kerry team, who went on later to win the senior champion All-Irelands in the 80s. Of that, there were 5 girls from Ballintubber that played.
The men folk, too, were once again beginning to make an impact. New talent began to emerge.
I was playing in 1970. I started playing with the Ballintubber intermediate team. We were beaten in the county semi-final by Ahamore, and the following year then I got on the Mayo minor team, and we won the Connacht minor league and we won the All-Ireland minor, and the following year I came on as a sub on the senior team in Castlebar. After that then I became a regular on the senior team.
Former Mayo star Ray Prendergast transferred from Castlebar Mitchells back to his native Ballintubber, and soon a more professional approach to training was adopted. Rigorous training sessions were held here in Clogher Field, originally part of the old Fitzgerald Kenny estate, but purchased by the club in the mid-70s. Punctuality too was insisted upon. There were no excuses.
And also timekeeping was a big thing in it, like, because at that time you'd have guys coming supposed to be there at perhaps 8 o'clock, and they were coming at 10 past, quarter past 8 and that. And probably a funny incident happened myself at the time. I was pretty fit at the time, probably one of the fitter ones in it, but on this occasion I was coming over training this evening, making me good time as I thought. But coming along the road, we came across an incident where a neighbour of mine had a cow in a hole in that business. So we decided to do a good favour for the day, so we pulled up inside the road and jumped in and gave a hand at hauling the cow out of the hole. So this being done anyway, we ended up about 10-15 minutes late for training. So the nice greeting I got anyway from Ray, the Lord and that business was, yes, well, it's not 8 o'clock, is it? I don't want your excuses, so you have to do about 10 laps around the field on your own.
This new approach, combined with a deep sense of urgency and dedication, was to pay rich dividends. In 1975, after a lapse of 15 years, Ballintubber captured the West Mayo Junior Crown. In its 90-year history, the club had never been credited with winning a county title, but 1976 was to end this famine. This was the year that Ballintubber won, not one, but 2 county titles. Firstly, it was the turn of the under-21 team. History was made when they defeated Charlestown in the final at Kilchimagh. And then, on September 13th, the intermediate team overcame Ballinrobe by the minimum of margins in a pulsating final in McHale Park, Castlebar.
Great success at under 21.
To what did Ballintubber owe this sudden and phenomenal success?
But there was a number of things that may be attributed to the success at the particular time. In my view, we had very prominent players at the time in the likes of Ger Feeney, who was on the senior team. He had won minor and under 21 medals with the county. We had a great chairman in Eddie Walsh, and we had a great leader in Ray Prendergast, and he brought great spirit to the club. And sometime, I think around 1973 or 73 or 4 or whatever, the club hierarchy decided to run a parish league, and in my view that generated a lot of new talent within the club, and it helped enormously as well.
Ballintubber were now playing senior championship football, and in fact they reached the county semi-final in 1977. The 1980s began in style, with the club capturing the Division 2 league title by defeating Crossmolina in the final at Knockpore. If there was one competition in the club calendar that would always attract the crowds, then it was the annual competition for the Horn Cup, which was first presented to the club back in 1971. This Easter tournament was often the platform for young players to enhance their reputation. 1981 was no exception.
Drop kicks it into towards Sean Welsh. Sean Welsh has it, he's clear, and that's a great goal for Ballintubber. Sean Welsh the scorer. Very well laid onto him there by Sean Burke, and that's a great goal.
Jackie, come over here. Oh.
Here he is. On behalf of the Ballintubber Club, it gives me great pleasure this evening to present this trophy to our captain, Jackie Heenan.
Thank you.
The facilities at Clogher, however, were practically non-existent. Something needed to be done. Ambitious plans were devised, and with the assistance of a NANCO scheme and local voluntary labour, fine new dressing rooms were constructed. The new facility was officially opened on the 29th of May 1983. Past and present GAA stars and dignitaries from all over Connacht were in attendance on this historic occasion. The park was officially dedicated to the memory of the late great Ray Prendergast and was officially opened by his wife Joyce. Ray's mother, Mary, performed the official opening of the dressing rooms. The occasion was marked by the first ever inter-county game played in Clogher. Mayo played old rivals Galway, the eventual All-Ireland finalists that year.
Nice point for Mayo.
Some of Ballintubber's fine young footballers were now making a reputation for themselves in the Mayo county colours, culminating in 1983 with All-Ireland success at under-21 level for Jerry Garrity, and in 1985 for Pat McCarthy and Pat Walsh at minor grade.
It was a great honour, and in particular being in Ballintubber, man, it's something special bringing home an All-Ireland. I still play the football in Chicago. I'm an old-timer right now, but I enjoy the game, and that's what it's all about.
The departure of John Welsh and Jerry Geraghty to Chicago was a profound loss to the club. But Ballintubber struggled on. There was another intermediate county final appearance in 1987. Although unsuccessful, the players of that era still look back with pride.
Againn hops it, tips it on his toe, tackled by Pádraig Rowley. He beats him on the side, kicks a long ball into Shane Campbell. Drops about 60 yards out. Dennis Kearney goes for it, it breaks. People a bit slow there. Breaks again up the field to Concannon, who tips it on his toe, comes out here toward the field. Tommy Feeney passes it inside to Sheridan. Sheridan takes a shot, and over the bar. A point for Ballintubber, just touched over.
During the 1980s, Ballintubber captured a number of Horton Cup and Kelly Cup titles. And for the Ballintubber-Brafey-Tourmakeedy combination, there were 3 over 30 titles in the 4-year period to 1988.
Finally, lads, one last thing. To the Lord that's known, the manager of the club, and to the bishop and goal. How could we lose? We couldn't lose.
But the strength of any football club lies in its underage structure. And here Ballintubber ranks with the very best. The tremendous work put in by Burden and Og and the unselfish hours of dedication by many had ensured that underage football in the 80s was in a healthy state.
Tony Duffy, John Hines, Thomas Francis, Kyle O'Connor, John Coyne, Richard Lydon, James Horton, Louis Welch, James Finnerton, Patrick McCarthy, Pierce Dolan, Pat Welch, John Thornton, John Horton, Francis Seenan, Jim O'Toole, Anthony Coyne, Anthony Berry, Jim Barnacle.
Ballintubber were crowned County Under-14 B champions in 1985 and were also Under-16 A county finalists in 1987. This emphasis on underage level would inevitably yield success, and in 1990 another niche was created in the history of the club. Ballintubber, with 11 under-21 players in their squad and managed by Johnny Corcoran, Christy Feeney and Tony O'Connor, captured the county intermediate title for the 2nd time in their history.
Cup in a few moments, he kicks the right foot. That's a fantastic point. Johnny still going, kicks with the left foot, it's a testing one. Martin Byrne has it. Saved by Jackie Heenan. That's a great save.
That's it, actually.
It's all over. Last 15 seconds, or to Ballintubber the title comes through. They won it in 76. They're back again 14 years later.
Further structural development saw the erection of an impressive new stand in Clogher, dedicated to the memory of Ballintubber's most loyal and vocal supporter, the late Tom McCarthy. It was officially opened on the 24th of May 1992, with the Mayo playing National League champions Derry.
And as the band strikes up now, the parade of the two teams here in front of the new stand. This stand here was built in honour of the memory of the great Thomas McCarthy from Ballintubber, who was president of the Ballintubber club here and indeed involved in anything for the good of the Ballintubber and the general community around. Dropped inside and going through now for Derry's Damien Cassidy. Damien Cassidy is with the ball, 30 yards out, takes a shot. And it's gone over the bar for a point for Derry. And inside now to Tony Morley. Tony Morley with the ball. He's been tackled there by Gary Coleman. He gets round Gary Coleman. Still go through to the 14. Takes a chance and it's a goal! That's a goal for Mayo.
Anthony Tobair, Gary McGinn.
Hey, don't give one to that man. Give one to that.
No, he shouldn't get one. He shouldn't get one, all right.
Ballintubber football experienced mixed fortunes during the 1990s. In 1997, the intermediate team reached the county final but was defeated by Bunnyconlon after a replay. 2 years later, after a scintillating performance against Park in the semi-final, they qualified for yet another county final appearance, this time against Swinford. Team manager was Jimmy Lally.
Well, Ballintubber are senior club now for the first time since 1983. They will be playing the senior league and senior championship, and with so many young players around, I think they'll make a very good senior team. But it'll probably take 2 or 3 years to establish themselves as a senior club.
There were other notable achievements that year when the club's under-20 and junior sides captured divisional titles, both teams enjoying fine wins over Louisburg. During the 90s, the club continued its long tradition of providing Mayo County teams with star players. There was dual All-Star winner James Horn, the most prolific scorer on the Mayo senior team during the latter part of the 90s. Vinnie Kane, holder of 2 All-Ireland junior medals, had the honour of captaining the Mayo junior team to an All-Ireland victory over Kerry in 1997.
I was captain in 97 and we beat Galway in the Connacht final, and then we went on to play Meath, and we beat Meath, and we went on to play Kerry in Ennis, and we beat Kerry in the All-Ireland final, and it was a great honour to be captain to Mayo, to bring back in All-Ireland.
Other star products of the Ballintubber Barthen and Og structure are the talented Dillon brothers, Gary and Alan. Both starred for Mayo Minors in the summer of 1999. Ballintubber's success at underage level during the 90s was phenomenal. Teams at all age levels, from under 8 up to minor, had some outstanding achievements, the most notable being the county under 14A titles in 92 and 96. Many divisional titles were won in those years, culminating in that famous 3 in a row of minor A titles in 96, 97 and 98. The club's under 12 team was crowned County Division 1 champions for the year 2000.
Well, as President, Chairman of Ballintubber Board and Og, I would have great hopes for our young club going into the next millennium. We've had a very good year this year. Our under 21 team, for example, were county finalists. Our minor team are presently the county league champions. Our under 17s are county finalists as well. And even if you go right down to the younger players, it was only recently that our under 10s and under 12s put on a very impressive display of trophies that they had captured during the year. And certainly the future looks very bright indeed.
The local national schools, Mount Pleasant, Eru, Carnacon, Killawalla, Clogher and Ballintubber, have all enjoyed success in Cumann and Munskull competitions. There was success too in the 90s for Cara Community Games teams, with the boys team of 2000 winning the county title, but later narrowly losing out in a thrilling Connacht final in Markovitz Park in Sligo. It is with Cara girls that some of our greatest achievements lie. Their success at National Community Games level laid the foundation for the successful Carnacon ladies teams and ultimately for the Mayo senior ladies team.
In 1996 we got a silver medal, in 97 we got a gold medal, in 98 we got the bronze, and in 99 again with Noel as his captain we got back to the gold again, and I hope that will continue into the
And my ambition is to just go on like Cora and Maria and Claire and the rest of them to go and win in All Ireland.
The Carnacon ladies were the backbone of the Mayo senior team, which captured that elusive All Ireland senior title in 1999.
And the hooter blows, and Mayo have won the All Ireland. The celebrations begin.
Oh, it's a great boost for ladies football all around. For years and years we've been playing second place to the men, and it's absolutely brilliant now to come along and to do what the men can't do, as we've been told numbers of times.
That remarkable feat was repeated in the year 2000. And what a glorious moment for Ballintubber girl Maria Stanton as she holds aloft the Brendan Martin Cup on All Ireland final day.
Senior football champions of the 21st century.
An All-Ireland club title followed for Carnacon in 2002, and Cora Staunton has gone on to become a household name in Ireland. While the origins of Gaelic football in our parish stretch back over 120 years, the game of handball is generally regarded as the first ball game played in Ireland. The growth of handball in this parish mirrored the growth and strength of this popular sport nationally. Ballintubber is indeed very honoured to have in their midst the current president of the Irish Handball Council, Killawalla man, Peter Carter.
In fairness, to talk about it within the parish, we have to take area by area, you know. So if I start with my own area that I know best, you know, where I grew up in, and again, as I said, a famous landmark, the Old Mill, that's where we played all our handball. And back in 1931, it was developed to play handball, and on the Sundays, there used to be a huge crowd playing there. There were several games and a huge rivalry going on. We move on into Ballintubber. There was a Monsignor Corkle there, and he had a great love of handball, and he was like enough or more of the Irish that immigrated to the States. He had a huge input in handball in areas in the States. That's really where how handball got to the States the first day ever.
So, as the sun sets on the old millennium, we re-experience the joys and jubilation of winning. We anguish over the losses not just of football matches, but the loss of those who have loved and served our club so loyally down the years. With the dawning of this 21st century, we ask ourselves, what are the dreams and aspirations of our future footballers? So, Ballintubber GAA Club has entered this new millennium with a great sense of pride. Pride in its players and officials, past and present. We are also proud of our modern facilities, maintained and developed to date with the help of FOSS, and due to be further improved in the near future. We are proud too of our many fine administrators.
Súil agam go mé daoine agin I gcónaí mar a bhí ó Hughes, chun daoine óga a ógáil amach agus chun am a chaithimh lo chun na scileanna agus grá an na clifí a chathú.
Sean Feeney has given valiant service to Mayo County Board as County Secretary for many years. Thanks to the voluntary efforts of many in the parish, whether maintaining the grounds, managing teams, hard-working locker committee, this proud club is now going from strength to strength. This community spirit is evident in the enthusiastic support for all activities organised by the club. Our national award-winning club history was launched by Cumann Lúthchleas Gael Joseph McDonagh in the year 2000. The treasured old pastimes and customs of the parish, too, are preserved and passed on to a new generation. We face the 21st century full of hope and confident of peace and prosperity for all our children. On the playing fields, the work of many is yielding county titles, especially at underage level, and many fine achievements are still lauded in song by a new generation.
Every Sunday morning I try to kick a ball. We were taught to practice by kicking it against the wall. We tried so hard through the wind and rain, but those few inches, they put us through the pain. The pride in the jersey, the red and and wine. If we all stuck together, I knew we'd make this fight. If we all pull together, we know what we can do. We're the boys from the Tobair, and we'll always pull through. We're the boys from the Tobair, we'll finally have our say. For passion and for glory, we're gonna go all the way. We're the boys from the Tobair, we'll never walk alone. We're gonna bring the cup back to its rightful home. The three wise men, the homework has been done. If it's in Ballintubber or Clogher, we're always on the run. I always think back to February when the bellies weren't so tight from all the drink that was consumed last night. Many years we've been waiting for some championship glory. We're the boys from the Tobair, writing our own story. We're the boys from the Tobair, we finally have our say. For passion and for glory, we're gonna go all the way. We're the boys from the Tobair, we never walk alone. We're gonna bring the cup back to its rightful home. La la la, la 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 la. La la la, la 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 la. Sometimes I sit and wonder, will we ever play again? 'Cause we're the boys from the Tobair until the very end.
Supporting their team with the true sense of place are the handfuls of people with pride on their faces. They come from the townlands, the parish, the village. Their banners they proudly unfurl. An anthem of hope is the song they are singing as the whistle it sounds and the game it begins. And the roar of the crowd echoes up to the heavens. It sends out a clarion call to the fields of glory. On the fields where boys become men. On the fields